Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I've got a really cool book. I've had this sitting around for a long time. I read it and put a bunch of notes in it, and I think I said, hey, Tori, I think you should read this, and then she hasn't got to it, and I've been so into Dash Shaw, I wanted, where's that other Dash Shaw book? And so I went and grabbed it, and really enjoyed it. I think I got this at a Second and Charles or somewhere used, like the whole bent-up cover and everything, or I might have ordered it online just looking for all of Dash Shaw's work because I just went down I already always liked him, but I read some book I hadn't got yet and then got obsessed and tried to get all of his stuff. This I think is a really early one. This is 2004 2005, so I think even before like Bottomless Belly Button. It's by who's this by? I think it was by Alternative Comics. And I don't even remember seeing this like on his bibliography when I looked up to see what else there was. I don't think it was mentioned in that new book that came out from Uncivilized. So I think this might be one that people are less aware of, but it's a really, really good book. He mentions that this was the thing he was working on basically as his senior project when he was in school. So I would definitely recommend this. You see that he's coming out the gate just with all his powers kind of in place already in terms of his powers as a graphic formalist, really, and his ability to put together a book that's kind of unlike anything else you've ever seen. I mean, you see right out the gate here, you basically have what looks like some kind of knit thing in a frame that he's then drawn over or painted on glass or something like that. So he's making like real art pieces that are then becoming the part of the book, actual like hangable gallery pieces. And then right here, you get this praise for Dash Shaw, and you get two actual pieces of praise for Dash Shaw, and then you get praise for Has-Been Toy Trucks, and this praise is something that one of the characters in the book is saying about her Has-Been toy truck. So this is actually already part of the story, and then you get praise for Virginia Miles, who's the children's librarian, and then you get praise from her by her mother. So even there, he's already playing with format and setting up the story of the book. So this is basically a story about a girl whose mother is dying from Alzheimer's, which is probably why I'd given it to Tori and why she didn't want to read it. But that's the premise. Is she's going from Chicago to Florida, I think, and that's Virginia, the character that people are speaking about here, the librarian who liked the truck, and she's going there to deal with her mother dying, and then basically meets this guy. That's kind of the overall story. And I think really what this is it's about like an archaeology of emotion of someone's life. That's a topic that keeps coming back up, and how these situations of losing someone forces you to reinvestigate your life and do that kind of life archaeology. And so I'll kind of put out examples to that thesis as I go. But right out the gate, you get here's basically page one, and you get Dash Shaw showing off his kind of formal symbolic powers, where he's got, obviously, with this 9-panel grid, he's got a cross in the middle. You have the ambulances that have crosses on them. He's flipping that, and then they come to the 4-way stop here, and you get the cross and the 9-panel grid repeated, and then you have the situation where everyone needs to get to the hospital, and it's like, oh shit, we're causing a traffic jam here. So really symbolically packing a lot into one page, and then this kind of symbol shows up throughout. Then you get introduced to Virginia. She's going to be, going home. She's quitting her job. She's going to go deal with her mother. You get this image of Pangea forming, which at first seemed, some of these things I had to flip back to, like once I got a better understanding of the book. Again, talking about huge spans of time, right? Like monumental global geological time. But then that gets repeated. Here is another thing that I had to flip back to, but I think in the end what this represents, again, kind of like this data collection, archaeology type of thing. But I think there's a recording that's referenced later in the book, and I'll get to that. And I think this is supposed to be the audio from that recording. But I'm not sure, because there's also a bit in the back where Dash Shaw says that this was supposed to go and I think maybe that's why you get the square format with the circle on the cover. This was supposed to be lined up with a album that his friend was making, so they were going to do something a bit like what I believe Poe and Mark Danielowski did with House of Leaves and her album House of Leaves. They were supposed to be companion pieces, and it sounds like that didn't quite work out the way they wanted. So maybe this is just one of the representations of the songs. Also, I'm not sure on that. Here he has these set of plates, and they go backwards for some reason. Plate 4 through 3. And they've got these images. This is, an image of the Alzheimer's disease eating her mother's brain up. So they're kind of just explanations of some of who the characters are. This character, Dick, is the guy that she meets when she goes down to visit her mom. So let's know who that is. And this is showing her with this kid, Richard, so another Dick in her life, and who died a shocking death. Here it makes it look like he drowned in quicksand, but that gets played out more. This is a really old book, so I'm really going to give away spoilers and delve into the content because I think it's worth it. But she's, this is kind of how she's thinking about it, losing this person to quicksand. So you get a lot of the information you need, but the details aren't quite there, and it all fills in. Another thing that's really interesting that doesn't really make sense until the end of the book, and I love that Dash Shaw, even in his first project, has the confidence to let you figure it out later and gives you everything you need to figure it out without much effort by the end of the book. But it's definitely like a to-read book, to really start unpacking it, probably even more in there on a third and fourth read. But here you get this kid's drawing, and you get this psychologist talking. This is like supposedly taken from a book. I don't know if it's a real book or not, but they're basically doing a psych eval of this kid based on the drawing. So the tree kind of looks like it's on fire, so he's scared of the outsides and kind of bullshit interpretive analysis. I don't know how much of that is, who knows. It seems bullshitty to me, but some of it I can tell you as a drawing teacher, you can get a lot about someone's interior from what they draw. You can assume a lot about a person pretty easily if you pay attention. Here you get this strange image where he's got a photograph. It looks like someone keeled over and dying, and it seems resonant with this image of the nurse here tucking the mother in at night, and here it looks like someone caring for this child with the blanket. So another one of these just like weird things like the Pangea or the audio where you're like, I don't know what the hell that's about, but it seems resonant somehow, and I like the mix-up of having an actual photograph, but it does get explained later, and so I'll loop back to that. Here, again, some use of photography. I think this whole page is really interesting. This sequence seems to be maybe her mom's journal. She's talking about when she met her dad, basically, and then this is, I would think, it's supposed to be a photo of her mom and dad, and there's these X's on it, which I don't know that I totally understand, but it seems to have to do with the Alzheimer's. Like there's certain things that are in her memory that are being edited out. Like also here, like the dialogue is kind of missing, so it's like those are just things missing in her mind, I think. And she's talking about, he was so kind and gentle that I married him. He said, let's name her Virginia. So that's how you know it's her mom talking, because Virginia is the daughter. And then it said he died from a cancer in bed. So, his ability to pack so much into one page, and it doesn't look like a lot's on the page, but there's really a ton there. Like you get this kind of whole history of her parents and the tragedy that was as well, with him dying of cancer. Then here you get what I think is a series of cancer cells metastasizing. I'm not sure though. It kind of looks like a moon or a planet, but I think it's supposed to be cancer. But it does kind of get lit like a moon fading, and then you have that turning into the clock ticking. So you have this eclipse, or just the lighting dimming on this thing. You have time running out. So all of these symbols of death, as you just get this repeat image of the mother stuck in the bed. So really, really powerful, really sad stuff. Here's just another kind of formal thing I really like. This reminded me of Dave McKean's Pictures That Tick, where he took a picture of someone speaking, and you just get all the movements of the mouth. So he's really in this, especially as a young artist, and obviously someone who's gone on to be like one of the great kind of formal tricksters in comics already playing with all of the elements of comics, the interrelationships of pictures and words, and all of the different kinds of things you can put in. This book is one of those kind of books as an archive too, with all the different photographs and different kind of documents that are in it. So really trying out everything, and it doesn't feel messy, which is really, really impressive to me, that you have someone basically at their grad, or not even grad thesis, but just senior thesis, throwing everything at the wall, and it doesn't just look like a mess. It's actually a really emotionally powerful story. Anyone looking at this must have been like, holy shit, this guy's going to be a force to reckon with, and he sure has become. Here is, you get that 9-panel grid again, but also he's going and he's giving facts about things, and they kind of add weight to the action. So here's Dick putting on his tie, getting ready to go on his first date with Virginia, and it says, first century BC Roman soldiers wore focale, scarves soaked in water and tied around their necks to cool their body. In the 17th century AD, Charles II made neckwear required by courts. That's when it became a fashion. So it gives a sense of like where the tie came from, and that this guy's kind of casually putting it on, probably not knowing any of that, but tying again with this sense of archaeology and history, both personal and species wide or planet wide, I think is just something that's a core theme of the book. Beyond some of the formal things, Dashaw's drawing sometimes, like, I think he's intentionally drawing this woman's face pretty ugly. He's great in terms of communicating. I've never been a huge fan of like actual, the drawings he made or whatever, but he's so good with effect. They usually use color and stuff, but here, the way he's using zipatone and things like that, I just really find these impressive. And again, his cartooning always communicates exactly what it wants to communicate. It's just a lot of times they're kind of ugly, sharp, angular people, or like these two dark eyes. And I know that's on purpose, but it's kind of unsettling. Here's another one of those little bits that reinforces this idea of history and like the sediment of history and the archaeology and how something got trapped and became fossilized. And I think that's also because we're talking about someone rethinking their own past because of the death of their mother. It's talking about how things can fossilize and lose a lot of information over time with these cutaways. And then here you get back to that 9-panel grid again, and in the middle, you've got that cross, but then this is the excavated area, and you still have a lot of territory to explore. And then they're actually here looking at the site, but it's like she has excavated this area, I think, metaphorically, and is kind of, by talking to Dick here, is re-examining this loss of her like childhood boyfriend Richard, and she's relating that to the death of her mother, and kind of rewriting her own history and letting go of things so she can move forward in her life. Just another interesting formalism here, having this dance diagram. I know he's used more diagrammatic stuff in other works, so just another cool thing, cool little visual here. Then here she goes out to watch Dick, who's like kind of a wannabe, never gonna make it rock star, go play at a local bar or whatever, and this is a representation over a few pages of her mom dying, and so you get the little cartoon ghostie going up with all the other ghosties while she's there just at this concert. So she wasn't even there for her mom dying. You get the sense that this is a kind of a self-absorbed, selfish character, Virginia, where she is there for her mom, but she doesn't really seem to be engaged with her mom so much as interested in this new guy that she met. And really she's interested in this new guy because he seems to remind her so much of someone else. So her relationship is kind of pretty gross, but that's part of what she's dealing with here. This is also a really interesting use of format in the book, like just the way the pages are placed to create meaning. So a real cool formal trick where if you have these two pages, you basically have them having sex for the first time, but in between there you kind of get this abstract like phallic penetration resonant thing where I think Dashaw's trying to show, like, represent the internal feeling of the sex experience in between the image of them actually having sex, and then turns that into this image of like the roots of the tree and that then leads her back to, well, this is actually, I think, the branches of the tree. So then that leads her back to the roots of her experience and the roots of her memory. So again, that archaeological dive into the sediment, and then you go to the sandbox, so you get that showing up. And this is her and Richard as kids playing, and you learn a bit about them. You also get here where they're filling these balloons with their breath, and then they release the balloons, and that resonates back to here. She's obviously remembering the balloons as well while she's having this romantic encounter with the new guy, but he's tying that the sun and the balloon heading towards the sun as obviously the sperm heading towards the ovum. So again, a lot of symbolic complexity that plays out over long sequences of time. You have that they had buried a time capsule together. So again, that kind of archaeology and digging things up from the past is just saturated in that. And then here you go back to these psyche evaluations of kids' drawings, and these ones are attended by now the artist comments. So like here, my mommy, and then this is the psychologist kind of assessment, the projection, overall impression, mixed messages from mother, specific indicators, teeth associated with aggression, smile indicates pleasant personality, large hands are often near child, touching, grabbing, very tall figure, mother considered extremely significant person, or looms in child's mind. And so you get this invasive little kind of thing where I think these are supposed to be Richard, but they could be, I guess, Virginia's as well. Oh no, it's the drawer is a 5-year-old boy, so these are Richard. And then you get a news story here that tells you what actually happened to Richard, and this is that his therapist in Louisiana was using rebirthing therapy. So here you can see the therapist thinks that there's some problem with the mom, and so he has wrapped the child in a blanket and then is going to have him wiggle out to rebirth and go through some, therapy session with that. And the child this is how Richard dies, is he's suffocated in the blanket. So then what you realize is that photo that looked like someone trying to help someone trying to care for someone, is actually someone smothering someone. And I think, again, symbolically, that's pretty loaded when you're talking about someone's fraught relationship with their mother, that you have this image here that's, depending on your context, was initially resonant with an image of care, and then here, when it's in context of the news report, this is like video evidence and it says that there's video evidence basically showing the child suffocating under the weighty cloth womb. So this guy was recording the therapy session in the story and created the evidence of him accidentally murdering this child. So just such a loaded, intense story, and I can't imagine writing and drawing and making something this good, like, as a senior project. It's just, you get, again, a sense of what a genius Dash Shaw is and always has been. And then here she's basically saying, like, even though her mom's just died and stuff, and I don't even think they have addressed if she's actually found out yet. I think this is still in the same night, but maybe she's found out that they're talking about their future and what they're going to do. And he seems kind of like, like his dreams aren't going to come true. I don't think I'm going to become a rock star. And then he says, like, well, but I am excited about the future, aren't you? And she says, I guess so. And then she says, I'm going to get my hair cut tomorrow. And so there's this sense of, like, she's slightly willing to move on. Maybe she's dealt with some of it, but also you don't know. She seems pretty distant. So it leaves on this more ambiguous ending, and I think, given what a complex book it is, that's kind of good, because it can let you kind of come to your own conclusions about what happens with them and what kind of emotional catharsis she has had through all of this. Has she actually dealt with all of these issues, or how is she going to keep dealing with them? That's all really, really well done in the book. And here you get just some little one-off cartoons that are looking like interactions between Virginia and Dick, and then this strange thing here with the pair. So I don't know what those were. It seems like maybe web comics or something. And then on the back you have what is basically looks like a watercolor marker painting or marker drawing of the inside of a tree. So again, that idea of like an archaeology or information recorded in natural history as kind of a metaphor for someone exploring their past. And yeah, I mean, if that doesn't kind of sell you on like what an impressive book this is, both in terms of the content it deals with, the sophistication of the writing, the sophistication of the structure of the book itself, all of the different formal tricks, the themes. I don't know what else would convince you. Who knows if there's copies of these out here, but if you have not read this, and whether you like Dashaw's work or not, but especially if you like his stuff, I think this is a really must-have book of his. It's one of his better ones. I mean, he's still making great books. But it has all of that energy of like, you know, someone's real first shot at greatness and actually landing it. And that's always really exciting to me. So highly recommend this book to everybody. If you enjoy what we're doing here on the channel and you want to support us, there's two ways to do that. The first is through our Patreon. We have 2 different tiers of engagement on there. At the first tier, you get early access to our videos. At the second tier, you can get exclusive previews of the graphic novels that Sean and I are currently working on, as well as the ability to participate and help determine what happens in the story for our ongoing web experiment Prane Day. Any of the money that we get from the Patreon helps us buy the books that we review, so that lets the channel keep rolling on, and it also helps us put money back in other creators and publishers' pockets. So we really appreciate that. If you want to support Living the Line itself, the best thing to do is to support what Sean's doing with Living the Line Publishing. So we'll go ahead and take a look at one of his projects now.
Like and subscribe and hit the bell, please, so Carson can finish reading his books and let me go home.